In today's video, I'm an idiot. I get my track saw stuck, I hit it with a mallet, I build a really cool table, I work with probably the prettiest piece of wood I've worked with, but then I have to deliver a table in the rain. If you've watched my previous videos, you know I get my slabs from Nick over at Maverick Sawmill just south of Portland, Oregon. On this trip, I ended up picking up 6 different slabs. So I've got tons of content on the way. Don't forget to subscribe unless you want to miss out on some of these cool builds that we have coming. Hardest part is now deciding which table to build first. I ended up choosing this 15-foot book match build simply because the grain in the wood is so special. I couldn't wait to see it, and there was no way I was going to stand it up on the wall and just have to stare at it. The first step in this build is trimming it to the customer's desired dimensions. I ended up having to go buy another track extension to make these cuts. It's not our biggest table, but since we're not going live edge on this build, I wanted to make sure the cuts were done in one pass without having to slide the track down and start again in the middle of the table, and potentially not having a straight cut. This first cut on the end grain went relatively well, but I didn't have as much luck on the other end. Now learn from me on this one. I've always seen people take multiple passes with the track saw. I've always been against doing it, but I've learned my lesson today, especially without a brand new blade, and if the slabs have any tension in them, they're going to try and pinch the blade and stop it like they did for me. And you're going to look like an idiot on camera trying to free the saw. Don't hit your saw with a mallet. You're an idiot. And when I say you're an idiot, I'm talking about myself. In previous videos, I've hidden my mistakes and not showed you guys and been honest. But I think that's probably something that's pretty important, so I'm going to work on that. I make mistakes all the time. It's how you recover and what you do to fix them. That's what's important, and that's what separates you from a lot of people. A lot of people will make a mistake and then they just half-ass it and try to cover it up. I don't try to half-ass it. I do cover it up, but I try to make it look like it never happened. Just take pride in what you're doing, and in the end it's going to turn out how you hoped, and if it's not, just do it again. Since we decided to remove the live edge from this table, we really wanted it to look modern and clean, so I ended up taking a 1/4-inch roundover bit and keeping this one nice and straight and simple. Because the grain itself is so wild, as you'll see later in this video. You know that saying, less is more? Well, that definitely describes this table. These 2 slabs were probably the cleanest black walnut slabs I've worked with. There was almost no knots and very, very few cracks, which is definitely a plus when it comes to making money on a table. Time is money, and I hate waiting for epoxy to dry. Luckily for me, all these needed was a little bit of Black Star Bond CA glue, minimal epoxy work, and these puppies were ready for sanding. You gotta love the power of the Festool Rotex though. Second lesson of the day. Do not recommend using hot water while water popping black walnut. It turns purple. Remember that grain I was telling you about earlier? Yeah, it's pretty wild. I don't know about you guys, but my least favorite part of a table build is sanding. I've been thinking one of these days I'm just going to buy like 5 of these sanders, mount them together. Should work, right? Something I like to do, and I'm not sure everyone else would agree though, is I try and get all the sanding done on the top side except for one grit. What this allows me to do is flip the table over, and now I can do all the necessary work on the bottom, and I don't have to flip the table over again until it's time for finish on the top side. And once I do that, I just hit it with 1 grit of sanding, and then I know it's perfect and ready for that first coat of finish. Having this Festool router is a game changer for me. I used to use a trim router when installing the C-channel, but now with the adjustable height stops, it makes it so easy to make quick work of it. Now once you get both of the channels routed in with this router, I'll take my grandpa's router that's got a different bit on it, and I'll clean up that center section, which then allows the C-channel to sit nice and flush with the bottom of the table. Gives it a really nice clean look. All it takes is a little bit of chisel work, clean these up on the end, and then you're ready to get that C-channel going in there. Once you have these cleaned up, who doesn't love a quick little C-channel drop? Bam. I like to use a Forstner bit. You can kind of give it a little twist so it centers in the little slot there on the C-channel. Then I'll use a drill, hopefully drill them straight, maybe straighter than I did on that one. I like to use these Forstner bits. They do a really good job of drilling really straight, in the sense of they track straight. Give the edge a small little countersink. I want to get a better countersink than that one. I just have been lazy and haven't ordered one. Also, every time you order a package of these little threaded inserts, they're 1/4 20. They come with an Allen wrench, and so I have like, I don't know, 15 of these now. I like to just cut one and then mount it in the drill. It's so much easier to install them than trying to do it by hand, especially in hardwood. And when you're using as many as I do, it just makes sense to use power tools. And I think you can get them better. Like, you can actually push and you can feel how tight they're getting, versus by hand, you might push it a little bit too hard. Recently I did a table off camera and I ended up using over 40 of them just for this one table. It was kind of a softer wood. Someone else did the top, I did the base, and I really wanted to go overboard to try to help. Kind of brings up another point. I almost never sell just table bases. Usually it's a complete table build, but I am starting to kind of think about it. So if it's something that people might be interested in, is table bases, let me know in the comments. And I'm considering it. I've thought about doing like a bolt together one, or like the DIY welder kit. We'll see. Just going to depend on the interest though. Now once I get to that stage and everything's like stabilized and everything's been sanded, I usually like to put the finish on. So I will start typically with the bottom. I didn't show you in this case, but usually I'll do the bottom first, and as soon as that's been wiped off, I'll flip the table over. I'll typically then do the top side right away. You want to make sure you get all the wood covered, and so it gets an even seal. If you leave it, it'll end up warping on you. So you want to make sure you have enough time to do top and bottom all in the same setting. After it's dried for at least 24 hours, I'll come back with red Scotch-Brite on the sander, quick knock it down. Usually I only do the top side because I don't want to flip it over and potentially scratch the top side. And then I'll put the second coat of finish on. In this case, Rubio Monocoat. So far, it's my favorite. Always down to try some other options, but I think it's hard to beat Rubio. And like I said earlier, you guys are going to see this grain, but like, how crazy is this book match setup? Like, in person, it was absolutely wild. The video doesn't do it justice. I know you kind of get an idea, but it was crazy. All right, so now you've seen the wood top, or at least how we build the wood top. At the end, we'll give you some more detailed shots, but let's get started on the base. So this customer wanted something that was really simple, but elegant. Originally, we're gonna go with, I'm gonna call it the interior designer legs, where it's just that simple U shape. I was able to talk her out of it simply because I was like, this table just deserves something cooler. And I told her I'd come up with something that was at least elegant, but also industrial, but just fit. So this was a table I actually drew, or this base design I drew, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, and I never actually finished the design. And I finally finished it and I showed it to her and she's like, yeah, let's do it. So on this one, I'm using 1/4 inch, which is what I've been using on all my builds. Whoops. I recently switched over to 3/16, trying that out. You'll see here in coming up videos. And I think from here on out, I'm going to switch to 3/16. It's plenty strong, a little bit lighter, a little bit easier to work with. And it also just takes a little bit less time to weld, which if you're trying to make any money doing something, that's always a good thing. So once I have the shape kind of quick boxed in, or the feet welded on, I'll typically take the size material, like, so this is a 4-inch wide base. I'll take a piece of like 2x4 rectangle tubing, I'll put it inside there, and that allows me to make sure I have my spacing correct. I'll get them mounted, make sure everything's square to the floor, to the top, I guess, and then we're set to kind of just get them tack welded. Keeping everything nice and square is super important, especially when you're going to box something in like this. If you don't, you're going to fight it the whole time. And every now and then I still don't get them quite perfect, and you will see me struggle with them from time to time, but it's the 1/4 inch is kind of unforgiving in that sense. I like to use one of those, I'm going to call it like a rope tape measure, and it'll follow the curve so you can figure out your distance. I draw everything in CAD, but I'm not that good in CAD, so I haven't figured out yet how to figure out the curve distance on a part, so I have to just measure it and then cut them by hand. Eventually, I would like to figure out how to use the program a little bit better, so I could actually just have all these parts cut out on the CNC, and I literally could just form them, put them together, and just be done with it instead of having to measure, cut, fix it, not quite right, over and over again. Make the process a little bit faster. Now, every video I get someone yelling at me that I'm not wearing my protective equipment. Like, hey, look, I'm wearing a helmet now. In all honesty, I am trying to get better at actually wearing my equipment. But sometimes it's just easier and so much faster just to tuck your head and throw a quick tack down, especially if you got both hands full. What's cool about these bases is as soon as you start kind of boxing them in though, they take a completely different look to them. And I think they look way more professional than just leaving them open like most of the time you see. The downside though is it's a ton of welding. I did the math on one of these table bases and it works out to like 80 feet of welding between the two of them. So you got to think that's 80 feet of welding, 80 feet of grinding. I hand file everything. So it's a huge process. Yes, I charge a lot of money for these, but really is it worth the amount of time I put into them? I probably could figure out ways to be more efficient. And as I go along, that is something I need to work on. And bam, just like that, you got a table base. If you really wanted to, you could leave the welds raw, and I have done that on a few of them when the customer wants. If I am going to leave them raw, I typically try to do a little bit more of a fancy looking weld versus just putting material down that I know I'm going to take off. Now, as much as I hate sanding on wood, I actually enjoy the process of using a grinder. I feel like it's just more rewarding. You can kind of see something go from, that's pretty cool, to like, wow, that's actually really nice. And I don't know, what do you guys think? A lot of people would just leave it just like this, but of course that's not good enough for me. I gotta make a bigger mess and then I gotta pull the files out. Now, are the files completely necessary? Probably not. Could I use a different type of grinding disc that would probably help a little bit? I probably could. Have I spent the time to try to figure that out yet? No. So for now, I'm just doing what I know works for me. And on video, this doesn't show as well, but in person, when you put the powder coat on this after it's been hand filed and it's perfectly straight, it looks like a professional piece of art. And that's kind of the goal. Like, I'm trying to make it look like it was all one piece. There's no signs of any welding. It's perfect. Now, speaking of perfect, don't forget to get off all your little weld BBs. Sometimes you get these from just spatter. It just happens. Take a little bit of WD-40, a chisel, they scrape off or chip off pretty good. Once again, once powder coat's on there, they just look that much cleaner. A while back, I reached out to Alec. He builds these badass medallions so you can help brand your tables. For the longest time, I wasn't branding my tables, and I'm like, man, I am missing out on clients that potentially see the table in person, like, who built this, and they've got no idea. They're definitely not the cheapest thing, but I feel like they are extremely worth it, and I've already had a couple builds just based on someone seeing my table and then seeing the brand on there and was able to find me. If you want to have some made, just look him up on Instagram, Medallion Maker brand. He's great to work with, super quick turnaround, and he's actually just a normal good guy. Now, if you're cool, or at least cooler than me, you can actually use a little router jig that he sells, or it comes with it, I should say. I always try to do them by hand and be a pain in the ass and make them perfectly square instead of doing like a round corner, but that's on me. Now check out this grain. Like, this is why we did a simple clean edge. It's just crazy. If you guys have any suggestions on how to film this grain and actually make it pop for the video, I'd love it, because in person, it's absolutely wild. And for some reason, it just doesn't quite show up on video, but I think you get the idea based on this. Now, on some deliveries, I'll put these tables on the open trailer. Some of them I'll put in my enclosed trailer. It's always nice to use the open if I can, like if weather allows it. It just makes it a little bit easier on the actual delivery process, getting them in and out of an enclosed trailer. Now, unfortunately, the weather was supposed to be nice when we were delivering this table, but of course, that's not what happened. We ended up having to deliver this one in the rain. So I tried to shrink wrap them, do the best I can. Luckily, it was only about a 15-minute drive from my house, so not too bad. Well, don't forget to like and subscribe if you like this build or if you enjoyed the video. Leave me a comment, suggestions, anything. You guys have a great one. Until next time.